What is going on, guys? Just before I give you the intro, I want to tell you something extremely important. I'm giving away a free ticket to the $11 Drafters NHL Best Ball Playoff Championship. Each draft is $11 US, and I'm giving one free ticket away to a random user in the comments who comments below their Drafters username. I'm going to talk about this contest a little bit later, but guys, it's a free ticket, $11 US. The top prize is $5,000. It's a 25K tournament. It's super easy to sign up. And yeah, it's a no-brainer if you have a Drafters account. Make sure you comment below to enter the contest. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are breaking down week 26 of fantasy hockey. And for many of you, this is your finals matchup. For a lot of you, your finals ended this week, but some of you have April 8th to the 14th and also April 8th to the 18th as your final week. We're going to be covering both schedules for you, the teams with the best and worst schedules, and also the streamers to help you maximize your games. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, wow, what a great fantasy hockey season. This is my final week. Fantasy hockey is over until September, October. No, there is still fantasy hockey to be done, and that's on Drafters Fantasy Sports. They just released their new $11 NHL Best Ball Playoff Championship, which allows you to draft players for the Stanley Cup playoffs and potentially win thousands of dollars. It's available in Ontario. It's available in all of Canada, most US states. And if you use promo code FIREDUP when signing up and when going to deposit, it will match your deposit 100% up to $100. 20 gets you 40, 50 gets you 100, 100 gets you 200. That is free bonus money to use in this tournament to potentially win thousands of dollars. The top prize is $5,000, but the pool is $25K, so there's lots of prizes to go around. Anyways, guys, if you want to check it out, click the link in the description, download the app on iOS or Android, and make sure you use that promo code. Now, if we're looking at the schedule this week, there's definitely a lot of heavy nights. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, you're likely going to have a full roster. Maybe not Thursday, there's 10 games on Thursday, but definitely Tuesday and Saturday. With that being said, off nights can be pretty useful in terms of maximizing your games here. So if we're looking at the teams with the most off nights, the number one team is undoubtedly the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, they don't have the best opponent goals against average at 2.78, but having 4 games and 4 off nights is highly beneficial. And if you want to maximize your games and fantasy points, Vegas players could be a great option. The next team that has the most off nights is the Arizona Coyotes. They have 4 games and 3 off nights. Their opponent goals against average 2.73, not that good, but again, you never know. Hockey is very random. And yeah, so the players on the Coyotes could definitely be viable for getting those players in those off nights. One team that has a good off night schedule and a very good opponent goals against average is the Calgary Flames. They have 4 games and 2 off nights, which is solid, and a 3.16 opponent GAA. So there's a chance the Flames players could do really well. Now, in terms of some other teams with high off nights, we have the St. Louis Blues and the Chicago Blackhawks. Again, these teams that have a lot of off nights this week, they just happen to not have a good opponent goals against average. You know, take that into consideration, but obviously the players on the Blues in Chicago having 3 games and 3 off nights could be pretty good. Finally, we have some other teams. We have the Carolina Hurricanes, the Oilers, and the Canucks having 3 games and 2 off nights. Decent opponent goals against average. And then lastly, we have the Kraken and the Leafs, 4 games and 1 off night. Not the best in terms of off nights, but 4 games is always good. And both of their opponent goals against average is pretty good as well. Next up, we have one team that you definitely want to avoid for this week. And that team is the Boston Bruins. The reason for this is because they're the only team in the NHL this week that only plays 2 games. Both of these games are played on heavy nights, Tuesday and Saturday, nights that you're probably going to have to bench players. And their opponent goals against average is 2.65. So Bruins players, very tough to hold on to for this week. Next up, let's talk about the teams with the easiest opponent record this week. The players and the goalies on these teams could do pretty good. We have the Los Angeles Kings with the best opponent record, .393. That's really solid. Then we have the Calgary Flames, the Florida Panthers, the Nashville Predators, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Seattle Kraken, and the St. Louis Blues. Now, in terms of the teams with the hardest opponent record, the goalies on these teams could struggle, the players as well. We have the Winnipeg Jets with a .647 opponent record, very tough. Then we have the Vegas Golden Knights. I know they have a great off-night schedule, but very tough opponents this week. The Buffalo Sabres, the Islanders, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Columbus Blue Jackets, and then the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, in terms of the teams with the easiest opponent goals against average this week, the number 1 team is the Los Angeles Kings. They played the Ducks twice, which is very solid, and their opponent goals against average is 3.30. In second, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning, 3.27, very good. Then we have the Florida Panthers, the Calgary Flames, the Minnesota Wild, the Montreal Canadiens, and the Seattle Kraken. The players on these teams could do really well and put up a lot of fantasy points. Then on the flip side, we have the teams with the hardest opponent goals against average. The players on these teams could struggle this week, And we have the Dallas Stars with a 2.60 goals against average as the worst. Then the Boston Bruins, very tough with only 2 games as well. Anaheim Ducks, Chicago Blackhawks, Colorado Avalanche, Buffalo Sabres, and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now is the part of the video where I give you guys the streamers to help you maximize your games for this week. Like I told you, the Vegas Golden Knights have the best off-night schedule, so it could be beneficial to stream these guys. They don't have the best opponent goals against average, but nonetheless, if we're looking at the players under 90% rostered, I guess I'll include Eichel on here. He's 95% rostered on Yahoo. He could be available in a very shallow league, but we have Jack Eichel, Jonathan Marchessault, Shea Theodore, William Karlsson, Ivan Barbashev, Noah Hannafin, Alex Pietrangelo, who's day-to-day right now. Not sure the status of him at the moment. We have Chandler Stevenson, Braden McNabb, Anthony Mantha, and then we have some deeper league options. I mean, even Mantha is probably a deeper league option, but he's been playing pretty good lately. We have Doroveyev, Kolasar, Nicholas Roy, who's currently injured. He's day-to-day as well, so not sure if he's going to be healthy for this week. And then we have Cotter and Amadio. Next up, we have some Coyotes players, 4 games, 3 off nights. Not the best opponent goals against average, but still. We have Clayton Keller, Dylan Gunther, Nick Schmaltz, Power Play 1 guys, really good. Nick Bukestad getting a ton of minutes lately, producing as well. Lawson Krause, great peripherals, solid protection. Sean Dursey gets good power play time, decent peripherals as well. And then we have some other options. Logan Cooley, he's been really playing good lately. Matthias Michelli, he's pretty solid, not the best peripherals. We have Josh Doan, who is playing like an absolute king. He probably will cool down this week, but still, he's definitely an option in a deeper league. I should mention that Doan doesn't have the best ice time, so please take that into consideration. And we also have one more player on here, Alex Kerfoot. Now, in terms of the teams with 3 games and 3 off nights, these teams are the St. Louis Blues and the Chicago Blackhawks. We do have some solid options on the Blues. Again, both of these teams not the best opponent goals against average, so keep this in mind. But Jordan Kyrou, Robert Thomas Buchnevich, those are the top guys on the Blues. We have Jake Neighbors, who's been playing amazing lately. Unfortunately, he did get injured. He's day-to-day right now, so not sure if he will be healthy, but definitely a good option if he is. We have Braden Shen, Justin Fall, Colton Parayko, Torrey Krug, who might be injured. He might have been scratched, not sure. And then Brandon Saad. For the Chicago Blackhawks, not a lot of options here. We have Connor Bedard, if he's somehow available. Philip Kurashev, who gets a lot of ice time, plays alongside Bedard. We have Seth Jones, great peripherals, lots of ice time. Then we have some other options, Jason Dickinson and Nick Foligno. Lastly, I want to talk about Calgary Flames players. They don't have the most off nights. They have 4 games and 2 off nights. Still solid, but not like the absolute best. Regardless, out of all of these teams with good off nights, they have the best opponent goals against average, right? It's above 3.00, which is always good. And we have some great options on this list. We have Mackenzie Weegar, Nazem Kadri, Igor Sharangovich, Andrei Kuzmenko, Jonathan Huberdeau, Rasmus Anderson, Martin Pospisil. We have their Russian defenseman, Miro Manov, who's playing really good lately, young player, good peripherals. And then we got Blake Coleman and Connor Zary. All right, guys, finally, we're going to talk about the schedule from April 8th to the 18th. We have a lot of teams that have a decent amount of games and off nights for this week. So let's dive right into it. The number 1 team, just like they were in the previous section, is the Vegas Golden Knights, except this time they have a very good opponent goals against average. So they have 6 games, all of them being off nights, and a 2.97 opponent GAA. Vegas players for this week are going to be incredible. Next, we have the Edmonton Oilers. They have 6 games and 5 off nights, which is really solid. Their opponent goals against average is 3.00. So if you have those top Oilers players, it's definitely going to be good. Hopefully they don't rest their players like some top teams do, but we'll just have to see what happens. Then we have the Calgary Flames, who have 6 games and 4 off nights. This is a very solid schedule, not just because of the off nights, but because they have a 3.15 opponent GAA. Some of the players on the Flames could be great streams. Moving down this list, we have the Blackhawks, 6 games and 5 off nights. They do have a terrible opponent GAA though at 2.65, but you never know, some of those top players could perform. We also have the Canucks and the Coyotes both having 5 games and 4 off nights. Not the best opponent goals against average, but definitely good for maximizing your games. Finally, we have the Seattle Kraken and the Maple Leafs both having 6 games and 3 off nights and having a very good opponent GAA. On the flip side, we have the teams with the least amount of games and off nights for this week. We have a decent amount of teams that only play 4 times this week and only have 1 off night. These teams are the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Dallas Stars, the Buffalo Sabres, the New Jersey Devils, the Philadelphia Flyers, the New York Rangers, and the Florida Panthers. Now, some of these teams aren't horrible, like the Rangers and the Panthers, because they have a good opponent goals against average, but a team like the Blue Jackets with a 2.66 opponent GAA, that's going to be tough for this week. Moving on to the teams with the easiest opponent record for the schedule, we have the Los Angeles Kings at the top. Then we got the Calgary Flames, the Nashville Predators, the Carolina Hurricanes, the Florida Panthers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Edmonton Oilers. If you have the goalies and the players on these teams, they could do really well for this week. Then on the flip side, we have the teams with the hardest opponent record. These teams are the Columbus Blue Jackets, having the hardest. Then we have the Winnipeg Jets, the Ottawa Senators, the Buffalo Sabres, the Colorado Avalanche, the Chicago Blackhawks, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. If you have a lot of players on these teams and the goalies, it could cost you. Now we have the teams with the easiest opponent goals against average. The players on these teams could rack up a lot of fantasy points for this week. And we have the Los Angeles Kings being the #1 team. Then we got the Calgary Flames, the Montreal Canadiens, the Florida Panthers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Detroit Red Wings, and the New York Rangers. Then on the flip side, we have the teams with the worst opponent goals against average. The players on these teams could underperform, and their goalies as well. We have the Dallas Stars, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Anaheim Ducks, the Colorado Avalanche, the Arizona Coyotes, and the Winnipeg Jets. Now is a part of the video where I give you guys the streamers to help you maximize your games. Like I told you earlier, the Vegas Golden Knights have the best schedule, 6 games and 6 off nights. We have a lot of players on here. Jack Eichel, probably not available unless you're in a super shallow league. We have Jonathan Marchessault, Shea Theodore, William Karlsson, Ivan Barbashev, Hannafin, Pietrangelo, who's day-to-day, Chandler Stevenson, Braden McNabb, Anthony Manta, and then some deeper league options like Pavel Doroveyev, Keegan Colasar, Nicholas Roy, Paul Cotter, Amadio, etc. I should mention that Pietrangelo and Nicholas Roy are currently day-to-day, so they might not be healthy for this week. Next up, we have the Edmonton Oilers, 6 games, 5 off nights, great opponent goals against average. The unfortunate thing about the Oilers is that there's not the best streamers for them because they're so top heavy, but we do have some interesting options here. We got Matthias Ekholm, who's been on an absolute tear in the fantasy playoffs. We have Evander Kane, doesn't get the best ice time, but he still can put up peripherals, he still can produce. And then we got some other guys, Darnell Nurse, Adam Henrique, Warren Fogle, Corey Perry, and Ryan McLeod. Now for the Flames players, they have 6 games and 4 off nights, a very good opponent goals against average. I'm definitely a fan of streaming these guys. We have Mackenzie Weegar, Nazem Kadri, Igor Sharangovich, Andrei Kuzmenko, Jonathan Huberdeau, Rasmus Anderson, Martin Pospisil. They have a Russian defenseman, Miro Manov, who's playing really well, Blake Coleman, and Connor Zary. Next up, we have some Blackhawks streamers. I will say that their opponent goals against average being 2.65 could be risky, but they do have a lot of games this week. Them having 6 games and 5 off nights is very solid, so they could be viable options. If we're listing this off here, we have Bedard, Kurashev, Seth Jones, Jason Dickinson, and Nick Foligno. Next up, we have some Canucks players, 5 games and 4 off nights. Not the best opponent goals against average, but still good off night schedule here. We have Brock Besser, who's 90% rostered now, so he could be available. Dakota Joshua, who puts up so many hits. He's getting good ice time lately. He's producing. We have Connor Garland, Philip Hronik, Niels Hoglander, Tyler Myers, Suter, Bluger, Zadorov, Lafferty, and Mikheyev. Obviously, some of the guys at the end of this list are only deeper league options. Then we have some Coyotes players like the Canucks, 5 games and 4 off nights. Not the best opponent goals against average, but we have Clayton Keller, Dylan Gunther, Nick Schmaltz, Nick Bukestad. Bukestad's been producing really good lately, really good ice time as well. We have Lawson Krause, always solid, Sean Dursey, Logan Cooley, who's been playing really well, Matthias Michelli, Josh Doan, who still doesn't get the best ice time, so there's a good chance that he cools down, but I had to put him on here because he's playing really good since getting called up. And then Alex Kerfoot. Next up, we have some Kraken and Leafs players. They both have 6 games and 3 off nights, a good opponent goals against average, so I think streaming some of these guys could be good. For Kraken players, we always have a lot of options here. Jared McCann, Matty Beniers, Eli Tolvanen, Jordan Eberle, Shane Wright, who got called up and has played absolutely incredible. He's getting decent ice time too, so definitely a good option. Oliver Bjorkstrand, Jaden Schwartz, Yanni Gord, Andre Burakovsky, Adam Larson, who's currently day-to-day, Justin Schultz, Will Borgen, and Jamie Oleksiak. In terms of the Leafs players, never the best streaming options for the Leafs, but we have Morgan Riley, who could be available, Bertuzzi and Domi, who are playing on that top line with Matthews, Bobby McMahon, Jake McCabe, and Matthew Nice. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for supporting the channel this year. It's been a great fantasy hockey season. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, and I will catch you in the next one.